Okay, I get the go. We're live. Greeting to all you good people out there and welcome to Blockchance Online Live. My name is Sönke Mißfeld. I'm your host. And today we have a really exciting topic and it's the perfect day for it because we will talk about Bitcoin, which has just today reclaimed the $50,000 mark again. So it's a perfect time. And yeah, before we get started, let me remind you that Blockchance Online Live is a collaborative open platform and we want you to be a part of it. You can at first be a part of it by typing your questions during the show in the live chat. And at the end, we will pick out the most relevant ones and ask them to our speakers so you can hear what they think about that. And we will also have a ticket giveaway in the middle of the show. So please make sure that you stay tuned for that, for the Blockchance 2021 conference situated here in Hamburg. And yeah, let me start by introducing today's topic a little bit further. We have it named, Is Bitcoin a Hype? An introduction into cryptocurrencies. We will discuss what cryptocurrencies are, what the Bitcoin is able to achieve, and what its limitations are. And we will also see if Bitcoin is just a hype or if it's going to stay. So to get this started, let me first say thank you to the guests and for being part of the show. And now let me introduce to you today's guests. My first guest is Matthias von Hauff. He is the CEO of the VEG Bank, a conventional bank focused on real estate. Bank, which is the fintech DeFi arm of the VEG Bank, and it connects the advantages of a blockchain with conventional banking. Yeah, this is your moment to say hello, Matthias.
Hello, everybody. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me. And I'm looking forward to a fruitful discussion. Just by the way, one little correction, it's WEG Bank, not VEG Bank. So
oh, did I say?
Yeah, you said VE, but it's okay. Little German slip there. But that's absolutely fine. Okay, pleased to be here.
Sorry for that. Yeah, WEG Bank, just to say it once more. And I think 1031 is a project we will be, we may have mentioned a few times today. So let's see where that goes. Thank you very much for that introduction. And now I will go further to Dr. Sven Hildebrand, my second guest. He is the Distributed Ledger Consulting. He is a long-term Bitcoin enthusiast, and he's a member of the board INATBA, which is short for International Association of Trusted Blockchain Applications. Maybe you want to say hello to the audience as well, Sven.
Hello, audience.
Okay, thank you. So let's get started, and I will move over to my question block. And I will start with Sven, because I think you're perfect for answering this question. I would like to directly move forward to the current development and the excitement that's in the market, but I think we will have some people in the audience that have not looked too deep into Bitcoin. So as some might not be familiar with what exactly Bitcoin is, could you please give us a brief introduction into Bitcoin and the underlying technology? To name it the blockchain, so we have everybody on the same page.
Sure. Trying to describe a blockchain and Bitcoin and distributed ledger technologies in easy word is quite a hard task, but I will try my very best indeed. So basically what Bitcoin is computer code. Bitcoin is open source computer code. That means that everybody is able to download that computer code onto his or her computer. And there's no limitations whatsoever in whom is allowed to do that and who is not allowed to do that. Then the Bitcoin protocol, this computer code, takes different technologies into account. One of these technologies is a distributed ledger. That means that we have a distribution of this computer code. And then on top of that comes a consensus mechanism. This consensus mechanism is kind of the on top layer who decides within this code that is placed on different computers how new entries are made, and that there has to be a consensus about a majority of all the computers in the network if they write an entry into the Bitcoin blockchain or not. So basically, that's the whole thing and the whole thrill about Bitcoin. The interesting stuff is that the Bitcoin creators or the Bitcoin creator, it is not known if that was a group or if that was one person by now, is that they combine different technologies, put it together in order to create something very, very exciting that I believe will change, that has already and will change the world for the better.
It's, you know, what I really like is when you ask people about what Bitcoin is and to explain it. It's a really difficult task, and I think you did an excellent job without even mentioning the word currency here. And this is quite interesting because you could say it's a distributed ledger platform. You could say it's a revolution in the monetary sphere. It's a digital currency. It's really interesting how people approach that. That shows us that it's always something that needs to be explained furthermore. And yeah, very interesting what kind of approach you just recently had. So let me move forward to Matthias. Can you give us an overview about the historic timeline of Bitcoin and what is the origin?
Well, as Sven already correctly pointed out, it is not really known who created Bitcoin, who had the idea, who came up with it. There is a name out there. The name is Satoshi Nakamoto, but nobody knows who that is. It might be a person. It might be a group of people. We all know somebody quite known who claimed to be Satoshi Nakamoto without being able to provide any substantial proof for that. Quite a funny episode in the Bitcoin history. But anyway, the idea of Bitcoin was introduced by the way of a white paper which Satoshi Nakamoto published on the 31st of October 2008. So it was literally just a few pages explaining what the idea is. And he said, essentially, I want to build a peer-to-peer payment system so that you essentially don't have to go through a bank or through any other kind of trusted central entity, but you can send value from one point to the other, directly from one person to the next. And that was conceived in 2008. And then about 1 year later, on the 3rd of January 2009, the first block, the so-called Genesis block of the Bitcoin blockchain was created. So this was really the birth of Bitcoin. And then from that, it developed and more people got into the project. At first, obviously, it was only a very small select group around Satoshi who was involved in the Bitcoin protocol. And by now, literally millions and millions of people are using it and contributing to the network. You asked me to say a little bit about the timeline. I mean, I find it quite interesting, especially because we're talking about the question whether Bitcoin is a hype or not. And I remember when I first got in touch with the concept of Bitcoin, I understood nothing about it. A friend of mine approached me. He said, "Oh, you should really look into that Bitcoin stuff." And I thought it was some kind of a gaming currency, much like today you have. My kids, they play some computer games where you can buy treasures and you can buy little coins, whatever. And I placed very much into that universe, which was obviously totally off. It was totally wrong, and I misunderstood entirely. But at that time, he was quite excited because Bitcoin had gone from $20 to something like $50. And I thought, if it's gone up that much, then, this is really just a bubble. It's a hype. It's going to crash, isn't it? And I brought you something which I find quite interesting. I did it a little bit old style and old school because I wasn't sure whether I'd be able to share my screen here. I got this for you. I'm trying to hold it up to the camera so you can see it. Okay. Now, this shows you the development of the Bitcoin price up to about the time of end of 2017, beginning of 2018, when we had the first really publicly noted crash of the Bitcoin price, which was really in the papers and everybody was talking about it. They called it the crypto winter, when the price of Bitcoin collapsed from something like 17,000 euros down to 3,000-4,000 euros. My brain works in euros, being German, so apologies to the US dollar files here. But you can see it had gone up quite substantially. Whoop, wrong way around with the camera here. It had gone up quite substantially, and then it went dramatically down. Now, everybody called that a bubble and a hype, which I can understand, which was reasonable at that time. But I have something else for you to show here. This is what it looks like today. And actually, that supposed bubble, which happened at that time, end of 2017, beginning 2018, doesn't really seem that much of a bubble anymore, does it now? Because now we've hit something like 48,000 euros. And what was then was just a little spike. It was one of the minor movements along the timeline. So now people are saying, oh, you know, Bitcoin is overvalued. It's a hype and whatever, people will lose their money. Yes, some people might lose money if price goes down and you start selling like crazy and everything, and you've bought expensive and you sell cheap. But does that mean it's a hype? That's a good question.
I think you have part of the answer already in there. Yeah, so what I see is that maybe we should point out the use cases a little bit more. Or maybe, no. Let's stick with the price development, because we've seen a few of those spikes before, and it was always like more people adopting it. And I think in the very beginning, it was, as you said, Satoshi Nakamoto's white paper attracting some revolutionary thinking people with this peer-to-peer money system. And I think it was only the last hype that people like me, or probably, I don't know when you guys got in, but when people like me were courageous enough to say that this is something to invest in. And you had like people that were originally from the gold sphere moving into Bitcoin. And right now in the third phase, we see something very, very different. I would like to talk with you guys today, because it is definitely an answer for if it's just a hype or not. Because when things like PayPal moves in and allows people to trade cryptocurrencies, when we have like money funds investing into Bitcoin, when we have companies thinking about Bitcoin being a reserve asset and a hedge against inflation, there's something completely different happening than just a few technecks sitting there and having an idea of a monetary revolution that is very, very far away. So this is what happened in the process of Bitcoin moving forward. And as you perfectly pointed out, what we are currently just seeing looks high, but who knows what high might come afterwards. This is what I would like to go down today with you a little bit more. And before that, could you maybe one of you, whoever wants to take it, what were the main drivers of the Bitcoin price? What drove people in the last bubble? Let's call it a bubble, in the last price movement upwards, which you just showed us. What was the main driver that motivated people to go into Bitcoin and raising demand?
Well, Sven, would you like to go? Should I give it a shot?
Go ahead. I'll take on the future stuff.
Okay. Well, first of all, I think what we are beginning to see here is, as you rightfully pointed out, there are more and more professional investors now entering into the market. I mean, the news about Elon Musk investing 1.5 billion in Bitcoin has made a substantial difference in the market. It is now being perceived as something which is definitely here to stay, because else large corporations and funds wouldn't be moving into that direction. I find it quite interesting that you made the comparison between gold, or not really comparison, but you mentioned the word gold a few times, and Bitcoin by now is by some regarded as the gold standard of cryptocurrencies. So yes, at first it was really just a nerdy product, you know, some computer geeks sitting in front of the green and black monitors, much like the the early days of the internet. And then more and more actual use cases came that were connected with Bitcoin, where it's actually become a store of value. And I think the latest spike that we have seen was much down to the classic part, where people see something rising and then the fear of missing out, FOMO, kicks in, and people start investing as well. And they say, no, I want to be part of the story. I want to have my share in it. I've seen other people get rich. Why can't I? and that happens. And also, I think people are becoming increasingly aware that there is a limited supply of Bitcoin, and obviously that is going to drive the price as well. I think also what is important to see is what I have named the adoption balance. What I call the adoption balance is this. If you have something which is used purely for speculative purposes only, then obviously it's going to be extremely volatile. Price is going to jump up and it's going to jump down. And that's what I call an adoption balance of 0. If you have an other asset, which is not really used for speculation purposes at all, but it really has an everyday application, let's just, for example, say the exchange rate between the US dollar and the euro. Yeah, some people might speculate on the exchange rate between euro and dollar, but for my expectation, I would say 99.95% of all transactions are actually done for real use cases, people exercising payments. Yeah? So that's where I would say there is an adoption balance of 1. Yeah? So the lower the adoption balance, the more speculation you have. The more speculation you have, the less people will be willing to use it in everyday life because they don't trust that it's going to have the same value tomorrow. Let me take the dollar again for an example. If you and your dear wife travel to the US for a holiday, you accept the risk that maybe you buy $2,000 in cash for, say, 1,500 euros now, and you might only get 1,400 euros back when you reconvert it back. With Bitcoin, it would be a different matter. I mean, within the 2 weeks here in the US, it could fluctuate by 50 or 100%. You know? So I think the more adoption we see, and I believe that is happening more and more, the more stable the price will become, the more steady the growth will become, and that's going to, again, allow for more everyday use cases, again, driving the price.
Yeah, that's definitely what's happening right now. I totally agree. I think in the past there were a few more price drivers, like for example the techniques behind the mining structure, the so-called halving was when the maybe Sven, can you explain the halving, because I'm not that pro in that type.
Sure, I can do that.
Yeah,
so
thank
no problems with that. So the halving cycle is a built-in I don't really like to call it monetary mechanism, but that is something that most people would kind of refer to. So it's a mechanism that slices the reward for miners that the miners get for mining Bitcoin in half, and this happens approximately every 4 years, and will happen approximately every 4 years till 2140, when there's no way of kind of like slicing it in halves anymore. So it is not it is a disinflationary system. So new Bitcoins are coming into the market, but the rate of new Bitcoins coming into the market gets lower and lower and lower and lower. That's the whole point behind the Bitcoin halving.
Until it's reached 21 million, right? And that's something very special in the monetary sphere, that something is limited in the end.
Yeah, correct. There's a hard cap on of 21 million Bitcoin. There will never be more than 21 million Bitcoin in the system. And actually, due to the a little more tech and geeky kind of things, it was before around 3.5 to 4.5 million Bitcoin are deemed as lost, because people have lost their private keys. So you have to deduct this this number from the 21 to find out which percentage of Bitcoin are actually able to be in circulation. So I believe that there will never be 21 million Bitcoin in circulation, but a number that is lower than that. Nobody knows for sure, but it's a number about 3.5 million to 4.5 million Bitcoin that are deemed lost at this point in time. But I'm really on fire to getting into this future Bitcoin thing a little bit more, because it touches my heart on so many different places that I really like to go for that, if I may.
May I put the brakes, because I want to. You're totally on that a little later. But I would like for the audience just to have everybody on the same page here. So these halving events, when the supply of Bitcoin was halved, was every time a momentum when the demand overtook and the price started this rallying, and then at some point it just bubbled a little and came back to a new high, to a new starting point from which it went on or of a few years, maybe a few months. It was on the stable low level, as you called it, the winter, the crypto winter. And then some people get trust again, price starts moving again, it reaches new highs, and then we have the new halving, which might not be at this moment again relevant anymore, because when big investors come in, the money mechanics change. You know, this is I just heard an interview of Michael Saylor from MicroStrategy, who just pointed out that it's a complete different game by now when single persons can move the market with their pretty big cash accounts, moving into Bitcoin and bringing a lot of trust into the system as well, because as always, people are following when some are starting that kind of movement. Before we get into that a little further with the whole price and what the future brings, I would like to go down into the use cases. So we have this distributed ledger system, many people involved. We have these nodes that verify the transactions, and we have a disinflationary mechanism of new Bitcoin coming into life. What's the use case of that? So is it really a currency, as you would say? Do people use it for payment, or is it a store of value? Who would like to take on that?
If I may, Matthias.
Yes, absolutely. Go ahead.
Perfect. So no, it is not a currency, because currencies are made currencies by the state. So there is a legal term, and if you want to be a currency, the state has to say you are a currency. Does that mean you're not a very good medium of exchange or a store of value that has currency-like characteristics? No, that doesn't say that. It just says it is no currency. So is it a currency? No. Is it a store of value and a way of transacting value with each other? Absolutely yes. Then you gotta have to decide, or you can think about which are the or in what cases you want to prefer a Bitcoin transaction for a value transaction over a state currency. And when you're living in Europe and everything is fine, you kind of like forget to see what is happening in Venezuela and all the other countries in the world where the inflation rate of the currency that is handed out by the state is so high that it loses value so quickly that Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, it doesn't only have to be, I don't like the term cryptocurrency, crypto assets, let's say crypto assets. Yeah, it's really hard because it's so, I mean, you're so based on cryptocurrency. You always say cryptocurrency, but it's not a currency. It is a value, or it's a store of value. So they prefer doing their transfers with Bitcoin as a store of value over the currency that is offered by the state. So actually, the store of value Bitcoin is a challenger model for the currencies offered by a state. I think I actually
met someone from Venezuela who was stuck with that kind of a currency, and he managed to get his money out of the country when fleeing it with Bitcoin. So that is quite a use case, and we have some migrants coming into Europe, working here, and being able to transact into their funds to their families and support them via Bitcoin. So this is it is, as you say, it is not a currency, not a legal tender, but it is definitely some sort of a store of value and transfer medium. What I would like to point out, does any one of you know what a Bitcoin transaction currently costs? approximately? Because I heard something like 15 euros or something.
It depends how fast you want it to be executed.
Okay.
The faster you want your transaction to be executed, the more you pay for it. So realistically, let me call a bandwidth. I would say a Bitcoin transaction can cost you anywhere between €1.50 and 15 euros at the moment. That's realistic. I would like to go back to the currency question there for a moment, because without wanting to disagree with you, Sven, I would just like to round up the picture a little bit on that point, because whether it is a currency or not is always the question, before whom do you define that? Okay, so yes, Sven, I agree, absolutely, 100%. Within the German banking code, it is not a currency. Yet at the same time, let's look at the post-war years in Berlin when people were trading cigarettes for food. I mean, we even have the German expression Tabakwährung, which is literally tobacco currency. Yeah? So within the perception of the broad public at that time, tobacco was a currency. I mean, you were either rich or you were poor, and that depended on whether you had cigarettes or not. So I wouldn't go as far as to outright reject the idea that Bitcoin is a currency. It very much depends in what context. So as a bank, I'm normally expected to be rather conservative, but quite the opposite is the case. 1031 Bank, as the fintech venture of WEG Bank, has made it a point to make mass adoption real and create everyday use cases for crypto assets in everyday life. And my hold and my stance on the structure of cryptocurrencies should be that they should actually be recognized as money before the banking code. So I would welcome it a lot. Quite the opposite to what you had in mind, Sven, when you said you don't like to speak about cryptocurrencies. I say the opposite. I say I want them to be recognized as currencies wherever possible.
Sven, would you like to take on that? I think it's about the legal term here, right? I mean, if a currency is a legal tender is something that the government defines, and
no, it's not. Legal tender is one thing, currency is another.
Yeah,
For example,
that's what I wanted to.
The US dollar is recognized as a currency in Germany, but it's not legal tender in Germany. Big difference. Yeah?
True. Yeah. The question is who uses Bitcoin for what, and I think there is countries where it's already used as some sort of a currency, if you wanted to say like that. But maybe we shouldn't go too much down on that definition of terms, because I think Sven also is burning for getting down into the future prospects of it. Let's move forward to my next question. Before we get to, so we had the discussion if it's a good medium of exchange. I think we all agree that you don't use your Bitcoin to buy a coffee in somewhere. There might be solutions around that, like Bitcoin Lightning Network and stuff like that, which is complementary. Adding on it, and the ecosystem is evolving to provide that as well. But currently, people are basically using it as a digital asset. Would you agree on that?
Yes.
Both? Yes. Yeah.
Great. So, what exactly? Just to point it out once more, what exactly is the revolution behind this kind of digital money? Digital asset. Sorry. What's the revolution behind it? Why are people pouring into it? We had different approaches before. Why is it Bitcoin now?
Well, that's a very great one, and it makes this brings all the good big political questions and philosophical questions all together, and I could go for like years on that, but I'll try to keep that short and give my perception on it. Yeah. So the old monetary systems, they always relied on the state. So you basically had to trust the state, and the state could make money out of thin air and then just print it. And this is what is happening right now. Once again, so history shows that normal fiat currencies usually fail within 100 years. That doesn't mean that they have to fail the next time too, but usually they do, because there's a big incentive for a government to kind of ease all their pain by just printing new money, because it's like it's there. So you have a problem, okay, and you need to get money to fix the problem. Yeah, then you just print money to fix the problem because it's so easy. And and every state was the same. So China does that, the states do that, Germany does that, everybody does that. And Bitcoin was the first ever system to offer an alternative with nobody behind it who can be bribed to change the code, or who can be influenced political wise in order to change the code. It is just baked into the code this extremely cool governance system that you actually cannot change the code. And with more and more people thinking, how is this thing going to end? I mean, we have a worldwide pandemic, and we have the highest stock prices in history. That's absolutely insane. I mean, that is absolutely insane. This
and the highest levels of debt as well.
And the highest level, and it's all comes together. Yeah. So and normal thinking people do start to realize, okay, that this is not going to end good. And actually, I think Bitcoin offers a viable alternative to opt out of that system. And actually, this is what we're seeing right now, that more and more institutions and more companies like Tesla, they just hedge risk, and that is what they do.
I think, or rather, the way I like to put it is, I call the time that we're seeing now, I call it the age of financial enlightenment. In essence, what I mean by that is there used to be a time before the age of enlightenment where, for example, we would accept that one human being can own another human being. Yeah? You could have ownership rights over people, with something which at least in our culture here in Western Europe, is utterly unthinkable. You can take away my car, you can take away my house, but if you take away my freedom, I will rather die defending it than to accept that. Is one of the highest values we hold. And just as we now have complete freedom of choice over the profession we use, over the religion we exercise, our sexuality, or whatever it may be, we still accept certain rules as a given. And I ask myself, why do we? We accept that, as you rightfully said, Sven, governments or sovereigns make legal tender. They make definitions of what is currency and what isn't. And Bitcoin is exactly as, and I fully agree with that, is the way out of this. It is a chance for a financial enlightenment to get rid of those chains, of those shackles, to be told you can use this as currency, but you can't use that. You know?
It's really interesting that you, coming from the banking side, actually say that, because that's what the whole revolution is about. And actually, there's more and more people inside the system looking at what is happening right now, seeing the patterns of inflationary behavior of central banks and governments coming again. And saying now, okay, what are my options? How can I go? Will I go into the stock market? Will I go into bonds, which are at lowest interest rates ever and stuck at the 0%? Will I go into gold, which is maybe a good hedge, but not really something that brings me out of that system? Or will I go for something new that has developed and has proven for 12 years now that it's working, it's running, right? It's running. It's not only running. It's been constantly coming to new highs from a few years after years. So people are looking at that, getting trust, and now the big players are coming in. And this is really interesting, because that is the part. How did you just call this phase? That was interesting.
I call it the age of financial enlightenment.
Enlightenment, yeah, perfect.
Enlightenment.
Because enlightenment, yeah.
If you think about it, think about this. Because of a decision of the European politicians, people who've been saving money are being robbed of their savings. And there's no other way to put it. Negative interest which is completely artificially created, that's burglary at the end of the day. Yeah? And I don't want to be enslaved as a person having to work on somebody else's fields, and I don't want to be robbed of my savings by an artificial low interest rate environment, which is entirely politically motivated. There is no other motivation behind it than that. Yeah? And as much as I think it was good for mankind, at least as I say, it is in our cultural setting. There are other parts of the world where this hasn't yet happened, but it is good for our world that we have accepted that the government shouldn't have power over your religious expression. And much the same goes for your financial expression. You should be the master and the ruler of your own choices in that sense. And this is why I believe cryptocurrencies as such, and the most prominent example of that being Bitcoin, is an absolute revolution, and it full well deserves that label.
Totally agree. And I think one of the points that are really interesting is how now the system tries to kind of like work on the normal people to kind of perceive this new thing that they're very much afraid of, and rightfully so, as something that has to do with terrorism and with finance of illegal stuff. And what really gets me going is that there are people out there, and they're just, and like high-ranking people like Yellen and Lagarde and Professor Straubhaar from Hamburg, and they are, for whatever reason, using their power. Well, there's some political reason behind it, and they are stating false facts. And that really gets me out of my head all the time, because they are saying things that are simply not true. And that's the reason why, we're commenting on all of these the internet platforms. A very interesting post from the ECB recently. I mean, Lagarde just got wrecked by the blockchain community, because she was just talking about things that she doesn't understand. And if you are not able to understand what an open source code is, it's very easy. Just don't judge it. That's the same with me not judging a bond portfolio, because I don't have enough knowledge of bonds. So I just frankly shut up about bonds, because I don't know anything about bonds. But I know stuff that is going into the digital age, and that's something that I'm talking about.
Well, it's actually Matthias. Let me take this over, because I wanted to go to the point of the risks, because when you just state that it's a threat to the current system, and it definitely is. It is a new form of digital asset next to or in competition even to what the central banks and the governments were issuing so far. So the question is, isn't there a big threat coming from that direction? As you said, they are already, is it called blackmailing Bitcoin? So there is a big issue in my eyes coming from that side, from the legal side. Will they forbid Bitcoin, or will they go for some sort of a legal directions to hinder Bitcoin becoming more popular and more of a wide adoption?
Well, first of all, I would like to point out that despite all my enthusiasm for what I call the financial enlightenment, I by no means want to advocate any shape or form of anarchy or anarchism at all whatsoever. Okay, we need protection. People will do evil with anything that isn't regulated, be it firearms, be it drugs, or be it Bitcoin. I firmly believe in tight legislation, tight regulation. But there must be a balance between freedom on one hand and regulation on the other. Yeah? So I want to make absolutely clear that I fully support that we need a clear anti-money laundering regulation. We need to make sure that taxes are still being paid and people are dealt with fairly, and that the entire universe of cryptocurrencies or crypto assets does not become a safe haven for criminal activities. Because this is not what I stand for, and this is what none of us stand for. We want to open up a new market and a new idea, and we want to bring a revolution forward which drives the good into the world and not the bad, obviously. So this is quite important, and I'm all open to work with regulators and with politicians on that front, with whatever means that I have to make sure that this happens. But as Sven said, yeah, it does require substantial knowledge about the product in the first place to be able to regulate it well. And here I must say this is just a huge challenge for everybody, because the markets develop much faster than any of us can learn. I mean, some of us work in the crypto space full time, and we are always on the cutting edge of what happens and so on and so forth. But you can't expect that from those people who are in decision-making capabilities to be fully competently speaking about every little aspect of this new developing universe. It is very, very difficult. So I believe it is important that we strike the right balance here, and that we make sure that we cooperate with the authorities on one hand, but that we withstand the pressure they make on the other hand to be over-regulating it. And the second thing I wanted to say is, I don't see cryptocurrencies at all as a threat to the existing system. I see it much more as a complement to the existing system, because freedom of choice has, whenever I have observed it, always brought improvement, and it's never brought a problem. And any kind of prohibition that I have seen, which has been a full-blown prohibition, look at the States, what they did with alcohol. I mean, prohibition. I don't think there have been more alcoholics in the history of the US than at that time. You know, it's brought nothing, and it came down with a big crash. It didn't work. You know? So I don't think it is realistic that governments will try to, unless you're living in a full-on dictatorship. I don't think that governments will crack down on cryptocurrencies as such. Let's make sure we help them regulate it wisely.
That's a very, very nice stand. I would like to get back to that point because I think there's a little bit more on that perspective. But we will at first come to our short break, and remember that we will have the ticket giveaway announcement in the middle of the show for the one-time economy class ticket worth €300 for the Blockchance Europe 2021 conference, where we have a lot of people who want to make this world a better place by moving this technology forward and bringing us towards a more sustainable, fair future. It will be situated here in Hamburg from July 7th to July 9th. And I will directly, after this short video, ask you a question in the chat. I ask you a question, and the first one who gets to answer it in the chat will be the winner of the ticket. So stay tuned for that, and let's move on to the video.
Who owns your data? Who owns your money? Your future. We are approaching a new dawn. Blockchain technology. Artificial intelligence. Sustainability. Part of the evolution. Hamburg, Germany, 2021. Blockchance, 2021.
And we are back on track. And as promised, I will just start with our Blockchance Conference 2021 ticket giveaway. The question I would like our audience to answer, and the first one who gets to answer it will win the ticket, is: How many Satoshis are one Bitcoin? So this usually takes a while because this is not the easiest question we've asked so far. How many Satoshis are one Bitcoin? There is always like, for now we have a new tool running today. And I might be able to actually see the chat. We're still waiting for someone. You should be able to Google it by now. How many Satoshis are one Bitcoin? Okay, I have an answer, but I don't have the username here. We will. Yeah, there's the first one with a name. We will figure it out. I hope Steve McVuye, I will definitely not pronounce it correctly, but he said it's 100 million Satoshis are one Bitcoin. This is the smallest you could divide a Bitcoin into. So anyone who ever had the fear of Bitcoin becoming so much worth that you couldn't use it anymore, you can divide it very, very far. This won't happen. So let's move on to the discussion round now. Congratulations. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm getting an intervention here because I don't know why. Maybe Fabian could give me the answer. We have Fahad Fazal is the winner. Fahad Fazal. I'm sorry for the misunderstanding here. Steve, if you're not happy with that, please come back to us and we will discuss it with you. Okay, let's move on with the discussion. We will figure this out. Please stay in contact with us for further clearing. Good. We were currently in the discussion at the point where I wanted to talk with my two guests, Matthias and Sven, about the risks of a Bitcoin investment. And personally, I come from, I was a gold bug before. I was working in the precious metals business and also in the investment sphere in that direction. And I ended there because I was a big critic of the fiat money system. And I saw that this was not going pretty well with the high levels of debt that we already had back then. And then when I see Bitcoin first, I realized that it was like, I think 2013 until 2015 something. I was amazed by the concept, but I was pretty clear this is not going to stand long, because so far, and coming from the gold side, you could see that the central banks and the governments would do quite a lot to not allow something really competitive happening next to their established power structures. And I'm not saying that those are not good things for the society. I'm just saying that it is a pretty well-established power structure, and it was kind of hard to establish something next to that. And who knows about the gold price findings and the fixing manipulation and stuff like that. That has been proven by now. You know that there is something in the bush, to say it like that. And I said, like, Bitcoin, this is not going to be allowed. And then, like, in 2018, 17, 18 or something like that, Japan was actually announcing it as allowing it as a meaning of payment. And that was the point where I said, okay, maybe it will happen. Maybe it is something that is allowed. And that was the point where I actually got into it. And still, I think there is this one big fear for many investors, for many who look at this from the side right now and think, should I invest, should I not? One of the big fear they have is, will the governments, will the central banks intervene at some point? Will they declare Bitcoin illegal, for example? Maybe Matthias, we already had you on that part. You've been quite optimistic that won't happen, but we have to kind of look out for that as well. Maybe Sven, I would be interested in your opinion on that.
Sure. I'm very much optimistic on that front as well, but maybe because of different reasons than Matthias. So I think that the only way that central banks and governments could have regulated Bitcoin and the ecosystem in a way that would have actually harmed the whole ecosystem that much that it would go away or would go into the deeper sphere or stayed in the dark markets, would have been before 2017, let's say, because that was when it was still not embedded into any infrastructure, and there has not been laws made by states who say, for example, like the German state, that you actually need a license to keep custody of private keys that are associated with Bitcoin. I think it's simply too late. If now the world would decide to shut Bitcoin down, and I think there's two different ways of looking at this. From a technical point of view, that's impossible from a technical point of view, but then from a means of kind of like getting it exchanged, you would have to have a concentrated action of America, Russia, China, and the whole European Union. They would all have to sit on one table, and Switzerland as well. So they would all have to sit on one table and at the same time decide that we don't want to have that anymore. And they would have at the same time to decide that, and then kind of like keep on their decisions that they made from the time on. And this is simply something that will never happen, because if China says right, USA has to say left. And that's as simple as that. And if you put Russia into the game, that's completely off the grid. So this will simply not happen.
I mean, I totally agree with you that the current development and that the positive regulation that has already happened, it does, after all, not look like there will be a concentrated action against it. So this is definitely the good point, and this is what probably lowers this fear of legal intervention. For most people, that should be enough. But in a theoretical case, when let me disagree with you, because we had like in the roaring 20s inflationary phase after the Great Depression, we had people pouring into gold, and then the US government saying everybody has to bring in their gold for a fixed price, and then even declaring the private ownership of gold illegal. So there is historic examples where a government was protecting their own legal tender versus the biggest competition at the market. And I'm not saying that Bitcoin already is, but it's developing.
Yeah, but what happened with the gold? So they said, okay, you are not able to hold gold anymore. You can bring it to us, or you can keep it at home. But what happened after that? How long did that stay? And was gold a sustainable store of value after that phase was over? And I'd say yes.
Yeah, I've been looking into that history because I've been answering that question quite often. And to be honest, it was perfect for people who kept it, but most of them wouldn't profit in their own lifetime, because gold private ownership was allowed in the United States just in the 70s, late 70s. So you had a 40-year gap in between where you sat on your gold, which was declared illegal, and you couldn't really, on the legal side, do something with it. There were There were a lot of use cases still.
Right, but the difference is that you could have taken your gold, even though it was illegal then. You could have taken your gold and then went out of the country, and then spent that gold someplace else where it was not illegal. And this is, I believe, Matthias also wanted to jump in on that a little bit. This is like the whole concept. Who is able to declare what you're able to do and what you're not to do? Why is there something who can say, okay, I own that pen, and then the state can come to me and take this pen away from me without any reasoning, because I own this pen? And that's the same with gold. And that's the same with Bitcoin.
Even though with Bitcoin, you own it on the blockchain. So they have to take away your key, which is quite interesting. You can use your key in whatever legislation area you go. This is actually something that is a pro Bitcoin argument. You could just take away the gold, but you would have to take in the keys, because your Bitcoin, my Bitcoin, is lying on the blockchain. It's just my key that brings me access to it, right?
I think we really need to differentiate here again between the legal structure and the actual structure. Okay, so and the technology. So legally, yes, of course, governments could introduce a law simply saying it is illegal to own Bitcoin, and you have a grace period until 6 months from passing of the law to dispense of your Bitcoin. If you don't, you're committing a criminal act if you still own Bitcoin. Yes, that law could be passed in any state. And I mean, if we look at what happened in the pandemic, a year and a half ago, none of us would have conceived the limitation of basic rights we have experienced in various countries around the world, and the extent that governments have cracked down on private individuals, on businesses, in a way which hasn't happened unless there were times of war. Yeah? So yes, this can happen, and I wouldn't rule out that it will happen. Theoretically, it is possible. But on the other hand, I fully agree with Sven. I think it is a war the governments cannot win, because you cannot really, at the end of the day, you cannot really take away Bitcoin as such from us in the same way. You would have to have such a massive concerted effort around the world from powers who are said not to agree with one another, that I just think it is absolutely unlikely that this would happen. I just cannot see a scenario where this is realistically going to be the case. I can't imagine it possibly.
Yeah, I think we can leave it like that. I just wanted to address that risk, because it is definitely, from looking at the past, it is out there and people are thinking about that. And I think the best argument for that is, if they wanted to take it down, they would have done it in the early cases, because something like Bitcoin doesn't happen without central banks and governments looking at it, right?
No, I completely disagree. They just didn't understand it. The problem was they didn't understand it early enough.
Correct.
And then they kind of like stumbled into this a little bit. Then they made a law here, and then they made a law there, and then they made a law there, and then boom! All of a sudden, it's like, shit! What have we done? This is how it's looking like. And I
mean they underestimated it?
Totally.
Because there is definitely someone sitting in the central bank and seeing, oh, there's a peer-to-peer money coming out. We have been looking at that kind of concept. We are talking about the most powerful institutions, governments and central banks. They have quite a pool of intelligent people sitting there and looking at the market.
I disagree with that. I would disagree with that, because if you are one of the most clever guy in the world, you would never go and work for a central bank, because they simply pay a fraction of what you get paid when you're working for a big fintech company. If you work for a WEG bank or something like that, you know, they hire the cleverest minds out there. That doesn't mean that at the central banks that they're all dummies. That's not the case. But if you're coming from where is the highest concentration of intellectual excellence, this is not the case in the central bank.
Okay. Let's not argue about that point, because you're probably right about that. I still would say, from my perspective, they have looked into it and they have let it happen. The second part is where we can agree all. They have let it happen so far, and it doesn't really matter so far, because at least in the last years, when developing CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, it is quite obvious that they have looked into it and reacted on the Bitcoin emergency. So I think we can agree on the point. At this point, it does not look like we will get this legal attack, right? Furthermore, to the other side, they are regulating it, bringing it into stable parts, so people can even invest in it and buy it and trade it with the security of the governments behind it. And this is definitely a positive development, because the Wild West is getting a little bit more of a regulated area here, right?
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Yes, totally. I think they will be changing tax laws. And this is something that I would be seeing on the horizon. I don't know if Matthias would agree on that, but I think that they would be thinking about taxing transactions in cryptocurrencies like they tax a transaction on financial instruments. If I were a state, I would do that in the first place.
You mean much like a Tobin tax? Is that what you're getting at? Or?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, I imagine.
It's possible. Yeah, people have been getting rich with Bitcoin, so taxing them is quite an idea. Yeah. Before I really want to move forward to the future side. Let me just point out a few risks that I see from my perspective, which is why I would recommend people who are starting to look into this right now. They have to be aware that this is a 12-year-old technology which has been running perfectly well and proven to get stronger from time to time, but still it is only a 12-year-old technology, and the technology which is based on cryptography and stuff like that is moving very, very fast. And with quantum computing, there are new capacities for computers rising with artificial intelligence. Developments are on the horizon which we cannot grasp with our human brains anymore. So there is definitely, even though the code is law and the code looks like it is perfectly written and will function for the next 100 years, we cannot predict every technological development within the next years. And there is definitely some sort of a risk from that side as well. Would you like to add any risks more before we get to the positive revolutionary side again?
Well, I don't think there is too much else to be added on the risk side, apart from the obvious, which is more on the consumer side, losing your private keys, being exposed to high volatility in the market, that kind of thing. But we've talked about that when we started the discussion, so I guess that concludes that.
Yeah. Okay. So I think I'm just directly passing this on to Sven, because he's been so passionate to talk about the future side, and I'm kicking away my questions here, and I'm just giving the stage to you, because I'm really interested in what you would like to say about the future prospects of Bitcoin and what's happening right now and why this is so exciting.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think the audience needs to know that I've been working in traditional finance and traditional banking beforehand. So I've been on the dark side before, and one has to realize that when looking into the big money shifts in the world, retail investors, they don't even move the needle. So if a retail investor buys a little more of this or buys a little more of that, and even if it's GameStop, it is just nothing when you compare it with big financial institutions. And I'm having to do with big financial institutions every day. And what is happening right now is that they are starting to actually not only talk about stuff, but actually do stuff. We will see the first bank in Germany in this year putting Bitcoin in their so-called Depot R, which is the where banks actually hold their own money, and putting Bitcoin into a Depot R from a bank. I think Matthias kind of knows what this means. I mean, it doesn't get any bigger than that, and it's a small bank, but
is that the reserve? Is that the some sort of a treasury asset?
Yeah, it's the bank's own money.
Well, actually, we've already done it.
So wait,
I'm not going to see the first bank. We are the first bank. We already hold a bit of Bitcoin.
Well, there we go. Did you make a big press announcement about that?
No, we did not. No, we did
should.
Not. The amount is too minuscule for that. But it goes back to regulation. We had to go through the entire process of evaluating how does that work, what do we have to report, how we put this into our risk strategy and everything. But So anybody making the claim they are the first, they can take a line behind us, because actually we've already done it.
Well, then that's even better. I didn't know that. So congratulations to that. That's a first. But then once again, the discussions that we are having like literally every day is that there are investment funds, and the big investment funds are coming and saying, okay, if we would now kind of shift 3% of our fund into Bitcoin, we would actually move up the price and triple the price of Bitcoin by shifting 3% of the whole fund. You know, that's 3%. That's nothing. And if they because the whole market cap of Bitcoin is for a big investment company, it's just so little that by putting a very little tiny amount into Bitcoin, it would make things with the prices that are like absolutely insane in the main brain. And this is happening at the same time all over the world, based on the fundamentals of a worldwide pandemic where money is printed like hell. So we ain't seen nothing yet. This is no financial advice. We ain't seen nothing yet. Nothing.
I would totally agree with that, Sven. I have absolutely the same stance on it. Without being able to back up these numbers at all, these are, so this is also no financial advice. This is my personal gut feeling. If I look at Bitcoin, and we have, it fluctuates, goes up and down, whatever. But the market cap of Bitcoin, and just for the audience who don't understand the term market cap, it means the sum of the value of all Bitcoins which are in existence now. Yeah. Look at what the German financial minister did. He made an aid package, if I'm not mistaken, of 600 billion euros for the pandemic, and that's Germany alone. And that, at that time when that was decided, was about the entire market cap of Bitcoin. And that was just one decision, a political decision of one country in the world. So if, for example, if we just say 0.1% of the world's population, say, have Bitcoin in their portfolio at this point in time, if that only goes up to 1%, then the price is going to go absolutely nuts. There is no other way, because supply is limited. Yeah. So yeah, I would fully agree with that, and I cannot see the price going back to where it was a year or two ago. Yeah, it will fluctuate, it will go up and down, but at this point in time, I would say sky's the limit.
Yeah, I've just to prepare for the show, I've watched or listened to a podcast with Michael Saylor from MicroStrategy, who had been starting to invest in Bitcoin in 2020 from March on, I think, but it's been later that he really got into it. And as well as Grayscale Capital is also a very, very big player in this field, and they've been early adopters, and this Michael Saylor has a conference every year where he invites companies and company leaders, CEOs, to discuss the what you've just described, that companies can take Bitcoin as a hedge against inflation, as a treasury into their balance sheet, and the interest before the March 2020 had been like 250 people or something like that. He had all of a sudden more than 7,000 people coming to that conference and asking him about his opinion and the way how to go there. So we are only seeing the very, very beginning. And there is, I mean, you have seen what just the post of Elon Musk has started, that he was going into Bitcoin personally, and it at this moment where the market cap is still quite small, it could be one billionaire, one George Soros, one Warren Buffett, shifting his mind and understanding what Bitcoin is about, and that is it is an interesting asset to hedge against inflation and this monetary, let me call it monetary madness that we are witnessing. Look at the balance sheet of the central banks. It certainly is. It might not be a consumer price inflation, but the asset price inflation is really on the run already. And if companies start to see, oh, that guy invested in Bitcoin and made a quite a well performance with that, and I'm sitting here on the side. We have this FOMO working, this fear of missing out. and more people start to move in. And at the same time, you have all these positive regulatory decisions, even providing legal security for it. So I think at the moment it really all looks for a very, very positive outlook of the Bitcoin. But as already the two others said, this is not a financial advice, but, and this is why we pointed out, it is still a quite new asset. It is something that happens in the technological sphere, and there is personal risks that people move their keys and lose their keys. There are Bitcoin markets that get hacked. These are all things that you have to take into account. But from my personal perspective, it looks like we're only just beginning. Yeah. I think, would you guys like to add something on this positive side? I mean, are we really, what about the possibility that central banks use it as an international trade balance like they did with gold in the old days?
I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think that's a realistic approach at this point, because I believe central banks will be very laborious, and they already are, trying to create something of their own, so they can circumvent having to admit that it's actually a good idea to an extent. So yeah, I don't really think that is a scenario I personally expect.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
I would add to that. I think so too, but this means absolutely that that is not a threat to Bitcoin in any case. Yeah, but this is how things are perceived.
I agree with
you know, things are perceived like, oh, and now the central banks comes with the digital euro, and now the Bitcoin is going to shits. No, it isn't, because because it's a way different system. Because the one system is still a system where a central banker can print out euros. They're not physical euros, then they're digital euros, but they can still print out as much as they want. And that's the difference between the Bitcoin ecosystem and every other form of central bank currency, I'd say. But this is the extremely bold prediction 25 years from now. I would say that that Bitcoin will be perceived as a world store of value, and all the central bank monies will refer as a reference price on the Satoshi. That's what I think is going to happen. But this is a bold and pretty far out prediction, but I believe in it.
Indeed, that is a bold prediction, but you're not alone with that prediction, actually. So let's just talk about this, because I think people are interested in it. When I looked at the last price moves, to kind of predict what would be an interesting point to sell some of the Bitcoin to monetize it that I have, I said, like, okay, we had what was it, an 8-time growth from the last high in the last bull runs. So when predicting this to this bull run, I was ending up at something like $240,000, which would be the new high before it loses again and then gets stuck to 120. Let's say the market has a little bit has matured, and there's more capital in there, so it only makes half that prediction. So my personal very, very broad idea of how we are going is we will gap the 100,000. I'm predicting 120,000. Let's make it a bet right now. Who's betting better than the new high? I'm saying it's 120,000, and then we go back to something around 60,000 until for a while before it calms down. What would be your predictions? Just personal, of course.
I personally don't like making such predictions, because you can only be wrong. At the end of the day, my crystal ball is no better than your cup of coffee, and we can look into anything. I can start reading chicken bones. It won't help. I can only apply my mind to it and say, okay, limited supply, increasing use case, increasing adoption balance, more and more people pouring into the market, all the arguments we've already heard. And what I will say, what my expectation is, and again, don't take this as advice, it's just me as a private individual, not even speaking for the bank, but for me personally as Matthias von Hauff, I will say this, I'm firmly convinced that we will see a regular price of Bitcoin well above 100,000 euros, not dollars, I function in euros, above 100,000 euros within the next 2 to 2.5 years as one of the regular points it hits. Yeah, just like now we've seen it regularly hit the 40,000 euro mark, whatever. It'll be about the 100,000 euro mark easily in the next 2 years.
Okay, Sven?
I'd be more bullish than that. I'd say we will be seeing more than $250,000. I function in dollars, so I think we will be seeing more than $250,000 within the next 5 years.
Which is not a contradiction. 100,000 in 2, $250,000 in 5. I think we're on the same page, pretty much, Sven, huh?
Yeah, and Matthias, I mean, you're right. It's all looking into a crystal ball, and who knows what trading platform gets hacked or something like that, which is giving it a little ditch again. Because
move one Satoshi coin and you're back at $50,000 at $500, right?
Yeah, so I think it's all predicting into the future something, and the price is really for most people who are reading into Bitcoin, the price is really not the primary thing. In the first years, Bitcoin was bought and mined, and they set up nodes because they believed in it and they wanted to happen. And I think this is quite important to bring it back, because the underlying technology, the blockchain technology, it allows so many different positive thinking directions that we should not reduce this revolutionary idea to just a price hype. And this is why people stick with it, and this is why people, even if they burn their fingers because they buy into a price drop, with the confidence and the belief that this works, and with the trust it gains over the years, and with courageous people being first movers, I think that the strength of this development is the community, right? And we are seeing more and more nodes being set up. We are seeing mining companies going public, and we are seeing the whole market mature. We are seeing a whole ecosystem running around it, and we haven't even talked about what Bitcoin sparked in the altcoin sphere. We haven't talked about Ethereum. We haven't talked about other solutions that are moving up. I think we can. I'm looking at the clock right now. We are already over time. Let me look at Konrad. Konrad, do we have another 5 minutes to talk about? Are there any things you would like to say about the altcoin market? Is there anything you would like to point out in that direction? Because cryptocurrencies, I know you don't like the term, Sven, but there have emerged so many, and many have died, but many have prevailed. And yeah, maybe you would like to give us some idea about what else you're looking at and why it's interesting. Sven, you would like to start?
Should I? I think Matthias has a very interesting project that he wants or might be wanting to talk about. I'll let him go first.
Yes, please.
Well, we have several very interesting projects, but I'm not here to advocate one particular project over another. That wouldn't do this discussion around any justice. Let me just generally say about the altcoin market. I believe we're now in a phase where it becomes very interesting to see which altcoin actually has a use case which surpasses that of Bitcoin by one or another means. Yeah? For example, ease of use, speed of transaction, and so on and so forth. And I think this will really make the difference. There is a large consolidation obviously happening. I mean, at the hype in 2017, coins were shooting out of the ground like nuts. And I'm very curious to see what's going to remain in the next 5-6 years of these projects, because they're coming to an end of their runway in financial terms, and then we'll have to see who picks up the pieces. I can say I have seen a lot of very interesting projects, and I'm incredibly curious to see what they can deliver in the future. Obviously, everybody knows we're partnered with Zilliqa, we're partnered with Nimic, and we're partnered with Litecoin. But this is not a promotion in that sense. It just shows that we are also, as a bank, looking into a particular set of such projects.
And your 1031 is being in the DeFi business, which has been, even before Bitcoin started the real run, that has been quite a hype. Could you summarize that into a few sentences? What's happening there? Is it only Ethereum there, or are you approaching this on an Ethereum base, or?
I'm not sure I understand the question, to be honest. Sorry.
Sorry if I didn't formulate it right. So when I read that 1031 is also in the DeFi market, that's right, or
That's
isn't
correct.
it? So decentralized finance is many of those use cases are built on the Ethereum platform, right?
Okay. Yes, but Ethereum is really just one of many projects that can do that. Ethereum is known for the ease of use and quality of the smart contracts that you can put on the blockchain. And because it's a widespread standard, you can obviously adapt it very quickly into several trading places, and the technology can be easily adapted by different users. But we personally have no connection to Ethereum as such. Our developments that we do and that we engage in are on the Nimic blockchain, the Zilliqa blockchain, and we work with Litecoin.
Ah, okay, I see. So it is way bigger than, or there's more to it than there's just Ethereum being part of the second hype and the DeFi sphere. Yeah. Sven, anything to say to the altcoins, or would you like to end this with a Bitcoin statement from your side?
No, we can tap into the altcoins as well, and I'm holding also some of the altcoins. I think you really have to look into the use case, and if you look into the use case and the base layer of Bitcoin, it's a fantastic and absolutely life and society changing thing, but it sucks for a lot of purposes as well. So, and then you gotta have to look at what are the purposes where it actually sucks at, and look if there are better solutions out there. So I'm not a believer of there will be one blockchain to rule them all. There will be different blockchains and maybe even other systems like directed acyclic graphs or stuff like that. That will be used for different things. Is like when you're using transportation, you do have a train, you do have a bus, you do have a car, a scooter. They all transport things or people from A to B, but they're different ways of transportation, and that's where you need different things for the transportation for, and that's kind of like the same with blockchains. Maybe that's the stance on altcoins at this point.
Yeah, I think it's a big market of ideas, and I was actually part of a using the blockchain for track and trace of goods and food. So there's so many different use cases which we have not tapped here. Who's interested, look into that, get a feeling of that, have a good feeling of the use case. And there are many experts who like to share their insights on that as well. I always like to end this show with the one question to my guests about what you would like the government to take into regard, or the regulators in total to take into regard. Now we're talking about Bitcoin, so let's stick with that. What would you ask the government about when talking about Bitcoin?
I have a very quick answer to that from my side already, and that's the one statement I make all the time, and that is, please reconsider your stance on the question of, can cryptocurrencies be money before the regulatory code? Not legal tender, but money. It should be, that's my opinion. I think it should be money. It would make it so much easier to regulate rather than having this patchwork of stuff where you tap into the regulation here and you make a little change there and then you try to consolidate it with that and it doesn't work and it's all regulatory spaghetti. Just call it money before the regulatory code and you've got everything sorted. That's my message to the government. And there's one more thing I'd like to say. I can imagine that Steph McGuire was a bit disappointed not receiving that ticket. If it is all the same to you, then we will hereby extend our invitation to Steph so the disappointment gets eased and we will give away one flight to the Blockchance conference to you, Steph.
Nice. You bailed us out. Great, thank you. Good statement. Good statement. Sven, what would you ask the government for in the current Bitcoin field?
Yeah, first of all, let me state that I believe that Matthias is absolutely right with his statement. Although nevertheless, I don't think that this will happen. So they will never in the world say that this is a currency. That's just something that I believe.
We are in a democracy. We can convince the public.
Well, yeah, but let's not open that part up. Otherwise, we will be here till 9 o'clock at night. So I understand this wish, but I don't think that it will happen. I think actually that especially the German regulator did a really good job in being the first to actually regulate financial institutions who safekeep private keys, because they wanted to kind of harshly regulate things, and this exactly backfired on them, because then everybody from the blockchain industry was flocking into Germany because they wanted to get regulated, and they were like, whoo, okay, this happened again, and now shit, we gotta have to deal with Binance, with Coinbase, with Kraken, with all of the people all flocking into Germany, and they were like, no, this was not intended, just leave us alone. And they were like, no, let's get regulated. What do we have to do? Where's the legal part? Where's the compliance part? We want to be totally compliant. And this is what happened, and there are some very cool guys in the regulatory sphere. Hagen Weiss, for example, he really knows his stuff. Christoph Kreiderling is one of the guys who really knows the stuff. So there are some great people out there. And actually, at this point, I don't really have a regulatory wish for Bitcoin. I do have a regulatory wish for electronic securities, though. And that is that the government should extend their electronic securities law to fund units and to stocks as well. But this won't happen either. Not that fast.
Yeah, I mean, someone has to call it out first, right? And there needs to be a public pressure, and as you're calling out, there is good people working in that sphere, and so I'm quite positive at the moment that this whole ecosphere is moving further. And another thought that I would like to end this: the good thing is about the Bitcoin hype, which we have, I think, argued right now that it's not really a hype, is that people who started with very, very good intentions to work into this field are now getting rich. And so these people start building up companies and bringing their ideas into this and moving this forward. This is exactly what the Blockchance is about, and this is a perfect time for me to bring this towards an end. At first, let me thank my two guests, Sven, Matthias. It's been very, very interesting. I think we could have talked like for hours, and maybe we could do this in private at some point, or we will have another round on Bitcoin, because this topic is moving so many people at the moment that it's definitely worth it. It's been a pleasure with you guys, and thank you very much.
Pleasure's been all ours.
Thank you. So you will find the whole show on our Blockchance YouTube channel. And so in case you missed part of it or you want to share it and say, hey, this is something interesting, we are very happy about that. Make sure that you look into that. We also have a quite vital Telegram channel, which offers interesting discussions and informations. So make sure you subscribe to that as well. And I forgot the questions of the audience. Konrad, do I still have time for the questions of the audience? No, we don't have time. Okay, yeah, we are like 30 minutes over time. I'm sorry for everybody who's made the effort. We will, by ourselves, look into that questions and see if we can answer some maybe in the aftermath here. Sorry. Okay, so let me announce the next show. We will have Blockchance Online Live about deep tech with some other host, and I'm quite happy because this is not really my type of expertise. The future of permissionless blockchains, which is definitely an interesting topic. So look into that as well. Whoever is a little bit deeper into the tech sphere will be satisfied by being part of that. So there's nothing left for me to say. It was a pleasure. It was an interesting topic. It is a perfect day, a sunny day with the Bitcoin reaching 50,000 again. Let's see where that goes. And from my side, I'm happy to be the host of this show. And yeah, stay tuned and goodbye. Long live the blockchain.